Hey guys, what's going on? Hope everybody's doing good out there today, and really appreciate y'all taking a few minutes out of your day to watch the video. And just wanted to take a second real quick to thank everybody for your continuing support of the channel. Man, I really appreciate everybody tuning in every day for the videos. I appreciate all you guys that are helping the channel out, becoming members of it, and I'll continue to try to put out the best tips that I can, and also continue to put out a few, one or two a week that seems to irritate some people on commentary. But hey, that's sort of the way it is. If you have an opinion, there's going to be somebody out there that doesn't like it. So that's just part of the territory. But got a really good tip for you guys today. I've been wanting to do this one for quite a while. It's my top 5 list of what I consider are the biggest myths or misconceptions in bass fishing. And these are the ones that I found myself to be true. That are myths, basically, from my own experience fishing for over 50 years. And I'm going to share them with you guys, maybe help you out catch a few more fish, knowing that these are myths. But just one more thing real quick, wanted to remind you guys, if you hadn't had a chance to go over and check out fishthemoment.com, do that. We got all of our lake map breakdowns on there. We've got all of Johnny and I's virtual seminars. We got them for sale on the website. Got a bunch of good stuff there. Got a bunch of stuff we're getting ready to announce. Just really cool. Check out Fish the Moment YouTube channel, fishthemoment.com. It's a really good resource to learn about fishing. Okay, I got 5 things here that I'm gonna let you guys talk a little bit about, why I think they're myths and how it's probably keeping you from catching some fish. So I'm just gonna go down through them in no particular order here. First one I have, the first myth in fishing is that, people talk in terms of like, well, the fish are doing this or they're doing that. And they talk in sort of a vocabulary like all the bass are doing the same thing at the same time on the lake. That's the furthest thing from the truth, guys. You can't ever say that the fish are doing this or the fish are doing that. They may be doing that in one part of the lake or river that you're fishing, but in my experience, there are always 3 different populations of fish in a man-made impoundment that are all doing different things at different times. You have a segment of the bass out there that live shallow most all year round, with the exception of like if the lake's froze over or something like that. These fish, they feed differently, they react differently, they position differently, they live shallow. They're more rogue hunters, they don't school up, and they don't adhere to what the other bass in the lake are doing. On the same lake, you may have a population of bass that live deep all the time. They may live deep, 25 to 30 foot of water. They may suspend out in open water, chasing shad, and they're just roamers, school fish, roaming type fish. In the same lake, you have those shallow fish and those deep fish in the same lake. And then you've got a population of fish that just use available cover and they're swimming and moving all the time. So you can't ever say that the bass are doing this or that. What you can say is that the fish that I have found or the fish that are setting up in this particular area are doing this. So don't ever think in terms of the bass all doing the same thing at the same time on any particular lake. Okay, number 2, next one, biggest myth, misconception, is that bass spawn on a full moon. I hear this all the time. In my part of the country, everybody says, oh, it's the first full moon in April, there's going to be a big spawn. I have not found this to be true at all. It's been the opposite. I have found that the moon phase has next to nothing to do with the spawn. And to me, it's everything to do about the weather patterns leading up, to the time when the conditions are optimal for spawning. If you have, for example, if you have stable conditions, if you have stable water levels, stable water clarity, stable temperatures, when that water temperature, starts to get into that 60-degree range, yeah, there may be a few more bass spawning on a full moon than other times. But what is more important in the spawning cycle is the weather leading up to that. If you have, like a real abnormal warm spell, for example, say it's really unseasonably warm for 2 or 3 weeks, right about the time the fish normally start to get ready to spawn, those fish are going to take advantage of that. If you have a situation where those fish are getting ready to spawn and then you have a severe cold front come in, or you have the water rises quickly, or you have some type of environmental change, that's going to knock those fish off and they're not going to spawn even if the moon is full. It doesn't really have much to do with it. One of the things that I have found is that bass, the optimal conditions for spawning with bass is a warming trend prefrontal with little to no wind. That's the whole thing. That's the best conditions that are conducive to getting a bunch of fish spawning. It doesn't really have much to do with the moon phase, and then everything else can affect that as a result, as far as the wind, temperatures, fronts, that type of stuff. So number two, no, moon phases don't have that big of an impact on the bass spawn. Okay, the next misconception, myth out there is that bass have feeding times during the day. That you always say, well, they're feeding now, there's a bite window. And yeah, I agree, there are bite windows and that type of stuff. But I think that bass actively feed very little in the daytime. In my opinion, this is what I've seen. I think that most of the feeding for bass goes on at night. I think that's when they're actively feeding at night. I think a lot of the times, or most of the time, when we catch a bass during the daytime, it's not because they're hungry. They basically, they're predators, they're opportunistic. They strike a lure out of a lot of different other reflex triggers besides being hunger. They strike it out of reaction, out of curiosity, out of anger, out of competition, all that type of stuff. You know, if they see, you know, a shad swimming, they may run out and grab it. But they're not actively feeding. There's other triggers that are the reason that you get bit during the daytime a lot of times. And there are some conditions that create bite windows as far as environmental weather conditions too. But I think that most of the bass feed at night. That's the third misconception. Number four is that cold fronts turn off bass. Guys, cold fronts do not turn off bass. The bass are always biting. This is one of the things that, if you're having a tough day on the water, I can assure you, you need to tell yourself the bass are always biting on the lake. Cold fronts will not turn a fish off. Basically what it does, it makes them reposition and it changes their mood and their personality, which requires a different technique or a different approach. I've never fished a tournament where they didn't smoke them. Every tournament that I have fished, there's very few tournaments. I'm going to guess 95% of the tournaments I fish, they always catch more fish than what I expect them they're going to catch, even in the worst conditions. So when a cold front comes through, don't tell yourself that the fishing is going to be tough or the fish aren't biting. What you have to do is you have to figure out how to catch these fish after a cold front. And there's two main factors that determine how you should fish after a cold front, and that depends on the light intensity and the wind speed. Because after you have a front, normally the wind's out of the north, it switches around, but you have varying degrees of wind speed. So the wind speed has a lot to do with the techniques that you use, as well as the sky conditions. Sometimes after a front, it bluebirds off and it's just bright and windy. Sometimes after a front, the clouds still linger around, you don't have much wind. So there's a lot of different factors that determine that. So after a cold front, don't tell yourself they quit biting. You're just gonna have to adjust your techniques. And I'll do some videos later on to give you some advice on that down the road. Okay, and the last one, number 5, is that bass are dumb. I hear this all the time. It's sort of like a disrespect for bass. And a lot of people that I have found, anglers and hunters, a lot of times, they assign sort of like an intelligence hierarchy to the species that are on this planet. And you can't really do that. I mean, bass, yeah, they've got a very small brain, but that does not mean they're dumb. Bass have been here for 3 million years, they say. I mean, the lineage has been here for 3 million years. And you don't survive, there's not a species out there that survives on this planet for 3 million years being dumb. Bass evolve quickly, they learn quickly, they don't make many mistakes over and over again as a group. You know, you may have some individuals out there, just like you have human individuals that are a little bit different, but as a collective species and a collective consciousness, bass are not dumb. They're highly intelligent. They have an innate ability to evolve and adapt to their environment to allow them to survive. And to me, that demands a tremendous amount of respect. I've seen it. I have seen bass evolve in their intelligence levels over the past 40 years since I've been fishing. I've witnessed it myself. It's something that they may not be conscious of. It's something that's just an instinctive, intuitive mystery of the universe that's out there. But you know, don't ever think that bass are dumb, because they're not. I mean, they're survivors. They've been here for a long time. So anyway, guys, that's my top 5 myths. There's a lot of other ones out there. My top 5 again is that not all bass are doing the same thing at the same time. Number 2, that the myth that the bass spawn during full moons all the time. Number 3 is that bass feed all the time. Number 4 is that cold fronts turn off bass. And number 5, that bass are dumb. So that's it. I'd be curious to hear you guys' comments. Let me know what you guys think. And once again, thanks for tuning back into the video, and we'll be back tomorrow with another one. See you.